I got all I want, and I got all I need, and I got everything. I got you and me. All I want, I got all I need.
Marriage is the best. The other day, I had my mentor over to see our newest edition, numero 6. Yeah, 6. And we had a nice chat. And I was just describing, the chaos of the family, the chaos of having 6 kids, the chaos of working on a marriage and career and podcast, and in general, feeling failure around different, areas of life, feeling failure in parenting, feeling failure in taking care of the house, feeling failure in prioritizing and engaging and organizing and slipping into habits that just take time, focus, energy, stupid, silly little things like spending an hour on YouTube when she should be going to sleep, or different things like that impact health, impact availability of mind and body and spirit for the kids and for the wife. And we were having a good conversation. And I can always count on my mentor to give me even just something small to chew on that makes a big difference. So he said one word and it made a big difference. So he said the word priority. And he just kind of described how in this season where we were feeling so limited, when we are such limited people in our ability to do everything that needs to get done, care for all of the emotional, physical needs, which are a lot. It's just a season of intensity, and making sure that you're prioritizing correctly is an important part of feeling good about moving through the season. And he said that in less words than I just did. It was important and it was good. And I got to thinking about not only just prioritization in the area of my marriage or in my life, but also in my marriage. And I was thinking about how marriages require priority. There are so many different things that I have seen come in between the priority structures of people's lives, right? In marriage counseling, people come and describe their lives as very full. Most people's lives are extremely full that are married and are busy with careers, busy with kids' sports. Don't get me started on that one. Busy with just the demands of life and balancing themselves, balancing their spouses, their families, all of the demands of life. But marriage kind of says, like, take care of me or I will die. And so does an infant, right? We're doing that currently, taking care of a beautiful infant. And she also, needs these little cares. If you've ever had a child, or if you could imagine what it would be like, you could imagine some of those cares. The need to feel close, the need to feel loved, the need for eye contact and expression, the need for food and sustenance and all the good things. And so we dutifully kind of submit ourselves to taking care of her, because we signed up to do that and we really want to do that. It's really important for us to get the opportunity to do that. And we are very blessed that we are able to have these 6 beautiful kids. But marriage also kind of demands a level of priority. Otherwise, it's going to die. It doesn't last that long when it's not taken care of. It can fail to thrive. It can fail to survive based on, in today's episode, based on how we are choosing to prioritize our time and energy and efforts. And so take care of me or I will perish. like a song. In marriage counseling, I'm finding over the years that hobbies actually can come in between marriage and intimacy. And I would say that anything that gets into the way of your marital intimacy is something that needs to be shifted down in the priorities list. And so we're going to talk about a little bit about how different things get in the way of intimacy. And we really are talking about prioritization. So one of the first things that came to mind when I was thinking about my experience in marriage counseling is that I've also often found that people talk about hobbies as some things that have gotten in the way of their intimacy, of their relationship. Different hobbies, different kinds of hobbies, different settings for hobbies, all sorts of different kinds of things. Nothing, obviously specific or consistent, like across like different, time and space. But hobbies just in general getting in the way. And essentially what I found, or what we find in marriage counseling, is that when a hobby feels as though it has a priority above time spent in the marriage, time spent with the family, time spent investing in communication, in conversation, in emotional connectedness, sharing information, sharing day-to-day struggles. When it gets in the way of those things, it can create quite a burden on the execution of the marriage, and eventually lead to a lot of bitterness and resentment based on, one person just taking the priority list and having the hobby kind of move up in a way that negatively impacts the marriage's ability to be intimate. So hobbies, funnily enough, was the first thing to come to mind. The second thing to come to mind was children. Stories of people who prioritize children above the marriage, and that's where we see this wave of marriages ending either kind of midstream when kids are school age or after they graduate. Some parents decide to kind of hold on for dear life until that graduation day, and but probably not the actual day, but around that time, and all of a sudden they choose to be done with the marriage and to move on based on, basically the children getting in the way of the intimacy. It's interesting because children getting in the way of intimacy is a natural state of things because there's so many demands that children bring into a relationship. We talked about the disruption phase a couple of months ago, I believe. And there's a huge level of disruption. If you don't manage the disruption, the disruption kind of manages you. And so you have this opportunity day to day to choose to prioritize your spouse kind of over and above the children that are, as a result of the marriage. So we're not putting the children above the marriage in priority list, even though people, need to get to sports and activities, and kids got to go to school, and they need meals regularly, way more regularly actually than is reasonable. There's so much food and so many requests for snacking. I have been against snacking not in my whole life, because I probably snacked when I was a child, but man, I do not like snacks. Oh, bother. So children can get in the way of intimacy, and it's natural for them to do so. That's not the children's fault. That is the management of the marriage's fault, which is obviously the parents. That's the parents' job. So as Becca and I try and manage our hobbies, which we don't have that many, and also our children, we're trying to protect our intimacy from those things. And, we're doing that through prioritizing one another, not necessarily always over and above, because there are times where we make sacrifices so that the other person can get something that they need. But it is something that needs to be balanced. So the children need to be balanced. The hobbies need to be balanced. Being right needs to be balanced. Being right can be something that we find in marriage counseling as something that is prioritized over the marriage. So if you're always looking to be right, or if that's like your aim or goal, oftentimes that creates a lack of intimacy. Because when you're right, the other person is wrong. And when you're focused on being right, you're oftentimes not focused on really like hearing, understanding, seeing this other person. And so it gets in the way of intimacy. Oftentimes being right comes at the expense of a part of your partner. And I'll say it kind of this way, like it's okay to be different without being wrong. It's okay to have a different opinion, a different perspective, to see things differently without being wrong. It's not wrong of you to see those things that way, but it would be wrong for you to prioritize being right and the way that you see something over the person that you signed up to see things with throughout your whole life. And when you prioritize the being right over the person that you signed up with, then all of a sudden, being right becomes a barrier to your intimacy with that person. Becca and I recently had a disagreement, and it was a really difficult agreement. I mean, this happened less than an hour ago. So when I say recent, I mean very recent. And I think this is probably my first podcast ever in the like middle or midst of an argument, a disagreement. And yes, it was silly. And yes, it was, but essentially we ran into this idea of we're prioritizing being right. Being right and being heard, having our voice seen and heard. And that's not wrong. But at the same time, if that takes precedent over the marriage, on a consistent basis, it does do a lot of damage over time. So it's okay to be different. You're not necessarily wrong just because you're different, although there are wrong things, and we can call those things out as wrong. And it's not fun to be called out as wrong by a partner, but being right shouldn't be prioritized over our intimacy or over our partner. The other thing that I see pretty often, actually, in marriage counseling, that comes up that gets in the way of intimacy, in the way of prioritization, is keeping the peace. Keeping peace basically just means we don't feel like we're in conflict, but keeping peace is different than making peace, right? So keeping peace may be, I don't say that thing because I know that that's going to bother you or going to cause an argument, or you're going to get frustrated because I'm bringing this up again. Keeping peace means not saying necessary things that will eventually lead to building intimacy because you're having the hard conversations that you need to have. Today, Becca and I had a hard conversation, not necessarily because we needed to have it, but mostly because we are who we are. We are very different in certain ways. And these things, it's an age-old kind of conversation that we've had 1,000 times. It just happened to be that, I ran a good number of miles in preparation for a marathon that I'm training for. And Becca was exhausted because of the baby that she's taking care of. And so late at night, what we really wanted to do was just enjoy each other's company and hang out and be together. And we were unfortunately unable to do that because we had this conflict come up, and it got in the way. It got in the way of our intimacy. It got in the way of our connection, I should say. But keeping the peace, on the other hand of that, on the other side of that, right, is like not having the necessary conversations. If that is prioritized over the actual relationship, the actual thoughts that you have, the actual feelings that you have, your actual real live, authentic, genuine experience of the marriage, if keeping the peace gets above those things, then all of a sudden the marriage becomes kind of a shell of what it's supposed to be, because keeping the peace is the priority rather than the actual marriage. If you're going to prioritize your marriage, you also have to make room for quite a bit of conflict as you go, because conflict is natural in human relationships, and it is especially natural in the marital relationship because of the nature of the design, because of the nature of how close you are, because of the nature of time and energy and effort, because of what it demands from you. There's so many things that are kind of putting weight on that. And so keeping the peace destroys intimacy as well. When people start coming to marriage counseling, they often find a kind of surge of connection due to increased priority. So on the other hand of this, coming into marriage counseling, I have seen people feel more connected, feel better about their marriage temporarily, just because they came one time. There's often this kind of interesting second conversation that happens when I'm asking how the first time went in the sequence of the counseling relationship. And oftentimes they're like, wow, actually we had a better week than we've had in a while, or we've had a better couple of weeks based on, different things. And what I found is that what I think actually occurs in that is that they are being more mindful because they have a space that is designed to be mindful about their marriage. It is much more easy to prioritize something that you are actively kind of thinking about and working on. Coming to marriage counseling is a version of that. It's something that people are actively involved in. They're usually choosing it, especially if we're going to keep working together and you're not kind of weeded out by an initial conversation that ends in, this is not going to work for you guys, which I do have sometimes. But essentially, people come in, they start to really think about each other. They start to think about, the value that they hold in one another. They tell their story, and that's helpful. And that kind of gets them back on track, kind of reminds them of the reason that they fell in love. And there's a lot of cool things that happen in marriage counseling, a lot of ahas, a lot of humility that comes out in marriage counseling at times, people working on themselves and trying to see themselves. And, something brought them to this point, right, that they're coming in. And in order to honor that, kind of my job is to facilitate the space so that they can get the most out of it and see each other better and more clearly and learn and grow and change and all of those good things. So it's a short-lived kind of surge because the priorities didn't change. They're just shifted temporarily. And so oftentimes the system will go back to its default fairly quickly unless something changes, right? So the natural course of things is that it will go back to the way that it was. And if you put in a lot of effort and energy, you can find yourself in a different position, even by simply reading a book, such as The 7 Habits That Make Marriage Work. Nope, that's 2 books. That is 2 books combined. That is The 7 Habits of Highly Successful People combined with The 7 Principles for Making Marriage Work. So the real book title is The 7 Principles for Making Marriage Work. Another one would be 8 Dates. Both of those are by John and Julie Gottman. The Love Prescription, another one by John and Julie Gottman. All of those are great kind of reinvigorate my marriage books. 8 Dates is pretty accessible. Obviously it's 8 different kinds of conversations that you need to have. The Love Prescription is a really simplified version of their whole book, The 7 Principles for Making Marriage Work. It's kind of it's a simplified, I don't know if it's more simple. It's the idea is broken down in a different way and presented in kind of bite-sized chunks, and it's great. I think the Love Prescription, actually, I think they did a really good job with it. So the Love Prescription would be a great place to start if you were looking for a place to kind of reinvigorate or re-engage or update some of the habits and some of the priorities in your marriage. So this all led me to the audacious, I hope I used that word right. I had the audacity to ask my spouse how are we prioritizing each other? And it was actually, it was a good kind of little practice, I was going to say skit. It was a good thing for me to do. I asked her, hey, do you feel prioritized first and foremost? And what makes you feel prioritized? And is there something that I could be doing that will increase your feelings that I prioritize you? I see you, I hear you, and I want to know you. And yeah, just how does that look for you? So I'm going to talk a little bit about our list, but I would encourage you to actually just ask your spouse how they would like to be prioritized in this season. In the honeymoon season, it's a little different. Priority in that season comes out in different ways. In the disillusionment phase that we talked about, again, priority comes out in different ways. We are currently in like this teamwork phase where we're figuring things out continuously, how to raise kids, how to run the house, how to keep things clean, how to keep people fed, how to educate, how to do all those things. And so we are currently in the teamwork phase and working diligently through all of the disruptions that are caused by having our beautiful 6 children. And so our list may not look like your list, but I'll give you our list as an example, and then you can take the practice of asking your spouse whether or not they feel prioritized and how they may feel more prioritized in your current season, what would make them feel that way. You can take that to the bank and cash that in, and it'll challenge you. That's for sure. It'll give you some challenges, but it'll also, I think, actually bless you and your spouse and your, extended, either the children or other people. So numero uno, this is the big one. So we're starting with the biggest, anticipate a need. My wife looked at me and said, I wish that sometimes the things that were on my plate were seen by another person. That would be me. And some of these things were like taken care of without me having to think about them. So basically it's kind of that episode that we did a long time ago on marriage and mental load. That was a good one. I learned a lot about that. I had like a simple little trick that I probably could think about and remember in this moment. But if you want to go back and look at the marriage and mental load episode, that's probably, it would be good because it would kind of provide some context for this. But essentially anticipate a need, see something, do something, take care of something. We're kind of in a teamwork phase that has a lot of stress. And so managing that stress and helping her and anticipating some of those needs is a huge way that she would feel prioritized. So that was a good one. The next one was, let's continue to call out specific appreciation and be really specific in our language with what we're seeing in each other and how difficult our different roles are, and just kind of supporting each other verbally through encouragement and calling out those things. This is something that I think we've grown a lot in over the course of the last year. I think year 10 to 11 has been actually a pretty good year for this. We've struggled in the past, but we're doing a better job of like seeing things and saying things and calling them out really regularly. Not that we were awful at it before, but it's something that we've been working on. Number 3 was plan a date. Again, there's a lot of intentionality here, right? So go out of your way, plan a date. I am, I shouldn't say ashamed, but I am surprisingly, for my area of work, but it makes sense if you knew me, bad at planning dates. I can like think through what to do on the dates, but like organizing and engaging babysitters and getting all of that straight, that's not something that I'm great at. However, the planning of a date, right? Like, hey, we're going to go here and do this, and I know that you would like this, and so I'm going to plan a date that kind of fits you. Again, we're kind of going back to that Shuka model, which if you want to find the emotional intimacy, marriage and emotional intimacy, I think we talk about the Shuka model, where are you seen? Are you heard? Are you understood? Are you known? And then are you appreciated? And when you are, getting specific appreciation and call outs, obviously that's good. But when you're planning a date and you're intentionally doing that, and you pick something out that they really like or really enjoy or that that they'll love, that just shows a lot of intentionality and prioritization. And so obviously that was something that came up. Number 4 was actually one of mine. It was giving grace. That's kind of the different and wrong metrics or kind of scale, if you will. If I do something different and it's not wrong, it might not be the way that you would do it. It may not be even the way that you would want it done. Could you see that with grace, extend grace for it, and call that as something that is different, different within us, different in personality, different in upbringing. It's just something different that I do. If you could see that as different and not wrong and not call that out and just give that some grace, that would make me feel very prioritized, seen, heard, and loved. And then the final one was, let's make time for intimacy. Prioritization in the teamwork phase with 6 disruptions makes intimacy more difficult. And so when you consistently kind of pursue that and make that a priority, there's a huge amount of benefits when you're working on that together. And so that's a very difficult thing. It's a very difficult thing that I hear about a lot in marriage counseling. It's something that comes up quite often. And it's difficult. It's difficult, especially when you're not feeling connected, to prioritize being intimate. Being intimate should be something that we do regularly. And by regularly, I mean based on the needs. Oh, bother. I feel like I just jumped into the deep end. By regularly, I simply mean balancing out where each person within the marriage is at in that moment. So we're balancing the feminine, we're balancing the masculine, we're balancing the needs, we're balancing the desires. And by balance, I don't mean that whoever has the greatest need or greatest desire wins. But instead, we're submitting to one another's needs. So it looks like the man oftentimes changing his expectations so that he can serve his wife well, so that when they are intimate, it is a celebration of both of them and their marriage. And then it looks like oftentimes the wife prioritizing her husband and making time for intimacy because, we know that is something that is a blessing and helpful. Now, that is a very, very dumbed down and simplified version of all of the complexities that occur in the intimacy area of marriage, which we haven't covered that much on the cast, but we probably will do some more of that. And if you're interested in that, you can feel free to shoot us an email or ask a question. But making time for intimacy is another way that we can make our marriage feel like a priority. That's the end. This is literally the end. That's the episode on priority. If you want to email us. If you want to shoot a 5-star review on the Apple Podcast, do that. If you want to subscribe to our YouTube channel, do that. If you want to sponsor someone to go out on a date and do a giveaway, feel free to reach out to us. If you want us to make merchandise, feel free to let us know. That's a thing. And as always, make sure that your marriage is good. Oh, bother. That's why I just say this is the end.
All I need, and I got